Welcome back to the Two Comma Club podcast. Today I'm joined by Brennan, the owner of Budgetdog, and I'm really excited about this. He is an amazing individual in the finance realm, and as you all know, I'm extremely passionate about personal finance, and I'm really excited about this episode. So, Brennan, if you can kind of give everybody a little bit of a background in terms of what it is that you do and how you help or add value to people, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So thank you for having me first off. And secondly, how we provide value is, financial education is an area that many people aren't really fully educated in. And so I saw that gap about 12 years ago. So my wife and I came out of school, tons of debt, and we had our own financial issues ourselves. And so when we figured that out, I'm a CPA, so I was able to, have some background. I'm a finance and accounting double major. I realized this isn't as hard as it needs to be, and it just should be pretty simple at its core. And so what we did was really take what we learned and what we applied to our own life over the last 12 years and made it super simple in a very roadmap type format, to the point where we talked about our book before we went live a second ago, and I wrote a national bestseller, The Roadmap to Financial Freedom. And that's really symboling exactly what we've done over the last 12 years and showing step by step how simple this process is with tools and resources and coaching and education and all that kind of stuff. And so over the last, let's call it 5 years since Budget Dog became a thing, we have systemized everything that we've done to keep it super simple so that the average everyday person that wants to get financial help or wants to improve their finances can, and they don't have to rely on somebody else their whole entire life. And that's a big sticking point for me personally, is when we built this, I wanted my students to all tell me they don't need me at the end. And so we go through a 6-month roadmap. We walk together, handhold, we have an entire team dedicated to their support. But at the end, I don't want them to need me, and they don't need to have me. And that's the whole point. So if you're with like a financial advisor, which is maybe an alternative, you have to rely on the individual for your whole life, and they're going to suck a piece of your portfolio out. I don't want to do that. I want to keep your life super simple. I want you to educate, and I know you can empower yourself and build your own wealth without other people taking from you all the time. And so what we did was make that really easy for the everyday person, to where we have over 2,000 students current day, and we've only been operating within Budgetdog Academy, which is my main product, for about 2.5 years at this point in time. So it's been a blessing. It's been awesome to see the impact we made for all the people that have come into our academy, and so many other, the content and the other products as well. And we'll see where it takes us, man. It's very, very beginning stages, and we've done tremendous in a very early time, but I think the sky's the limit. I think 20, 30, 40 years, I think we're going to be a household name across America, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Heck yeah, that sounds fantastic. I got to see a little bit of your story as you posted on Instagram and stuff, as to how it is you ended up here. But I guess before we dive into the actual steps that you took to get to where you're at, I'd like to know a little bit more about kind of your environment that you grew up in and how it is that you even decided that you wanted to use your major as finance and accounting.
Yeah, great question. So, I would say I grew up in a very middle class, pretty normal American neighborhood. And so we didn't really talk about money. My parents, God bless them, I love them, but like they didn't educate me on money at all whatsoever. So a lot of people were like, well, you must have been, taught by your parents, or like the school system taught you. Like none of that happened. This is all self-education. So I remember, I was making my first paycheck at McDonald's. This is back when I was like 16, 17 years old. And I didn't know what to do with it. So what I did is I went across the street to my PNC bank that my parents grew up at. And I took that paycheck and I put it in my bank and I saved it. And I wish I would have known what a Roth IRA was at the point in time, but I didn't. And so like little things like that, I never, was educated growing up. But what I've realized is that self-education is a very, very a great tool. And so no matter if the school systems teach you, no matter if your parents teach you, you have the ability to self-educate. And there are so many resources out there, not just the Budget Dog Academy and all the content we put out on a daily basis, but there is an abundance of resources. Now, you're not going to be told that you have to use those. You're not going to be, society's not going to say, hey, go use this resource or go to this school and get this education. No one's going to force you to get that education. That is going to be something on you have to do that yourself. And I think a lot of people aren't going to do that as a result. So they're going to do what they were told. And that's kind of how I grew up. I went to school because I was told. I went to college because I was told. And so I figured accounting and finance made sense for me based on my personality, kind of like what I liked, what I was interested in. But I wish I would have taken a second to think about why I'm doing what I'm doing. And I don't think a lot of people do that. And so growing up, that's kind of the pathway I went. Everybody around me went to college. Everybody around me worked the 9 to 5. So that's what I was going to do. And I didn't realize the power of, self-education with finance was, if I had that, I probably would have taken a different route, to be honest. Um, which route I would have taken, I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, going forward, going backwards. Hindsight's 2020, right? So like when you learn a ton. You learn a ton about the route you took. Looking backwards, it's always nice to see, but like the reality of it is that I want more people to be self-educated. I want more people to take the steps they want to take because they want to and they choose to versus they were told to. And I think that happens a lot in America. And I've kind of like broke free from that truth, but I think a lot of people are still living that day to day. And I'm trying to do as much as I can to get people out of that rat race.
Amen to that, dude. That I can't begin to describe how much I resonate with everything you just said. Like, same exact thing. Call it like the herd effect, right? Like your environment, everybody's going this way, and you're like, well, I don't see anybody going any other direction, so this is the way I must go. And the next thing you know, you go to college and you get handed $110,000 in student loans, and it's like, man, that is not fun.
I went to school and I didn't know how much how much money I was even taking out. Like I really didn't know that. That's how like uneducated I was at one point in time. And I started at Deloitte right after my college career, and I went into the audit field. And so I connected with a partner, a few partners, in fact. But the conversations they were having there, just about personal finance and like wealth building, it was so much different than like growing up. And it's funny. The where I went to high school, the same city, is where one of the partners lived, and we went to his house a few times. But I was thinking, I was like, this guy worth 4 or 5 to 10. I don't even know how much he was worth, to be honest. He's a partner, phenomenal derivative specialist, really smart guy. He was making good money. He was importing furniture from China type deal, importing his Porsches. Like he had a different level of wealth, but he lived in the same city I went to high school in. But like the conversations I had with the same people were not the same. And like the difference of those conversations were crazy to me. I remember at 22, 23 years old, I was like, wow, like I wish I would have known this growing up. I wish I would have had these conversations growing up, and I just didn't. But that's how close you are to building wealth. If you just put yourself in the right circle, you talk with the right people, you'd be amazed at what's possible out there. And like that's kind of the route we took, and it was a very, very practical route. And I wish I would have just connected with a few different people, a few different mentors, and it would have changed my whole entire trajectory.
Definitely. Man, that's fantastic. Your environment plays such a big role in who you become and the stuff you learn. What were some of the things that you did to intentionally start catering your environment to lead you in the direction you actually wanted to go when you started thinking about these things?
Yeah, good question. So, I left school as an accountant in a finance degree. So I had a double major. I did not go to grad school, and I got my 150 credit hours in order to sit for my CPA test. So when I was taking my CPA, I was also at Deloitte at that time. And so that consumed my life. Like after school, I was so used to going to, hang out with my buddies in college, and, every weekend was just wide open because, if you get good grades and you're going to class and you're working your part-time job, like what else is there if you're going that route? And so I had much more free time. But right when I left school, like my whole life changed pretty drastically. And so between studying for my CPA, between focusing on my career, and the people that naturally were in that circle, which I was blessed to have, it just started becoming my everyday life. And so it was part of like who I was and the conversations I had. And that really catapulted so much for me. And I always go back to that beginning part of my career of realizing how different this was. I left school thinking, I still want my personal life and here's my career, but it kind of became one. It kind of just became all one big thing. And some people look at that as a bad thing, but I liked it. I go 100% in everything I do. And I loved being part of that and building upon that. And so having those right people in my circle was kind of unintentional in the beginning, just based on my career. but I realized the power of having the right people. And so once I realized that was the case, I started listening to podcasts. I started, watching YouTube videos. I started, joining up in different entrepreneur circles, and I started getting myself, engulfed in that kind of communication and that conversation. And that changed the game for me. I remember listening to Russell Brunson. I was cutting my grass. Like I would cut my grass every week or whatever, and I would listen to the Russell Brunson podcast, and I would always come in right after that. And this is before I really even had a business out there. I was like talking to my wife about it. I was like, man, this would be amazing being able to give back and be able to, build a product that could serve so many people. And I consumed myself with that stuff, like Hermosi, Brunson, all the big names in the industry. And that gave me and lit me up so much. And so the more I put myself in the circles, the more I put that into my brain, the more I realized the potential I had. And so the skill sets I had were great, but if I didn't utilize those to help other people, what was the purpose? And so I used that with time, and it wasn't like it happened overnight, but throughout time, it started coming to me as like, this is exactly what I need to go. This is the route I need to go. Deloitte, my CPA career, all that other stuff is great, but like, is that really what I want to do for the next 30, 40 years? And it's really not. Like when I left work, I was ready to leave work and think about building and, creating value and helping other people. And that just lit me up. And when I saw the very small impact I could make just from starting, I realized if I really dedicate my life to this, it's going to change not only my life, but millions of families' lives. And that's exactly the path we took.
Amen to that. That's awesome. So it sounds like at some point you had to make the choice to take that leap of faith of actually transitioning out of your job and into this full time. What were some of the questions that you were asking yourself when you were taking this idea into consideration, and how did you ultimately take that leap of faith?
So many questions, man. So much doubt, so much just at play in my mind. It was a 24/7, just even in my dreams. Like I would literally like live it real time in my dreams. So like, like I said, I grew up with the thought of like, I need to get my career figured out, which was my CPA. I need to go to school, that kind of stuff. And then when I start my career, I'm going to work my way up the corporate ladder. Like that was literally the only thing I knew. And like mentally, I was like locked to that 2-week paycheck. And I didn't realize how much that was the case until I left the 9 to 5. But on my way out, I am a pretty conservative individual. So I wasn't just like the entrepreneur that like jumps and just like, hopefully it works out. So I started building my online presence, and I didn't even realize at the time that this was really what it was going to be today. And I was just helping people. Like I was sharing our story. We were paying off a bunch of debt. We paid off $304,000 of debt in 5 years. We were focused, but not finished, as Mr. Chris Hogan says on the Ramsey show, or when he used to be there. And I love that saying because that's exactly where we were. And so being able to take that leap of faith, I didn't realize it was even an opportunity when I first started. It was kind of like I was doing this on the side, but I still was very focused on my career. But then I started listening to Brunson and Hermosi and all these other people that have done it. And I realized the practical expert out there is really who you want to follow. And those were the practical experts. And so I started following, listening. So I created a plan. And that plan was to leave my 9 to 5 in 12 months. And so that came short 2 months due to a story I will share in a second. But the goal was to match at or above my 9 to 5 income for 12 straight months. At month 10, Deloitte found out that I was doing this on the side. They did not like that. they called me out. And so my goal was to stay 2 more months. I was actually on pace to do exactly what I was expecting to do. And they said, listen, you have 2 options. You can get rid of your account and you can continue to work here, or you can keep your account and you won't work here. And so I was very shocked by that, to be honest. There was some chatter. I remember the Skype through Deloitte. Some people were messaging me. It must have gotten through the office. And, I had the call with HR. I had the call with the lead partner. And I said, guys, listen, this is like exactly what I want to do. By no means is this a conflict of interest. I don't see this as being a conflict of interest. They agreed there really wasn't a conflict of interest based on the profession I was in. But they didn't want me to put my face out there and have a brand and, potentially ruin it or whatever the case was. And so I wasn't willing to do that. So I stood on business and I said, listen, I'm going to be taking the leap of faith. I'm going to be going into entrepreneurship. And thank you for your time here. And I think they were shocked. They were truly shocked. They thought they had the upper hand. They thought they could bully their way through that, just like typical corporate does. I remember specifically Mike Fox, his name. I will call him out because he was extremely disrespectful on that call. And we had a call on a Friday. We were going to reconvene on a Monday, and we met on that Monday. And he said that he became a connoisseur of budget dog. That exact comment had me extremely fired up to this day that I'm talking about it 3-4 years later. And I made sure at that moment that I would create something that would put him to bed. Quite honestly, like good or bad or in between, that motivated me. So we did that, and we built something really, really special. But sometimes you're forced, and sometimes I think everything I do in life is like I plan. All of a sudden something happens and I got to make a move. This has happened countless times, but this was one of the big ones where it was uncomfortable, but I was so motivated that I was able to fight through that pain and fight through that uncomfortableness to just go full time. And that was the best moment of my life. And at the time, it didn't feel like it. It felt like a lot of chaos. But I'm so happy we took that leap of faith, and I'm so glad Mike Fox decided to say that to me because it motivated me to another level I didn't know I even had in myself.
Dude, that's amazing. That is a wild story there. We've done over 40 interviews talking about people's leap of faith moment and all that stuff. And like every time it's normally like there's not really a push, but you had like an actual push moment. And it was very polarizing, right? Because it's like you're either committing to it and you're doing it now, or you're committing to staying in line, and that's wild. And then that coworker, man, that's that.
Well, funny enough, he was not even, well, he was a coworker, I guess, but he was the lead partner at the Cincinnati office, and I think he still is. And I actually see on LinkedIn, I always see his anniversary every single year of like 29 years, 30 years. And like some people are like, that's not good to be motivated by that. But the reality is like, you can't really fix that. Like that's what motivates you or what doesn't motivate you. Just use it as a tool. And I use it as a tool. And so, I don't back down from anything. That's one thing I'm really, really strong in is like, if I commit to something, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, go all the way to the finish line, and there's no half in, half out type stuff. And so when I was forced to do that, in the disrespect I received, there was no other option. Like it was a non-negotiable. It was going to happen. And so we've already built this past anything I would have done at Deloitte, like without question. But I want to take this 100 steps further, and I want to take this to the moon. And I know we will. Just a matter of time, having patience, having strategy, all that kind of stuff. And it's exciting. It's exciting to see where it will go. But I do, always recommend anybody thinking about taking that leap of faith, find that motivator that's going to take you to that next level. You'd be amazed at how many levels you have in yourself that you just haven't recognized yet, and you haven't come to the realization, or you have a lack of awareness. I have a huge lack of awareness probably to this day, to be honest, of what we could do. But I'm starting to come more and more to that realization of like the mountaintop that we actually can get to. And I think we can dominate anybody in the financial space, to be honest. I would say that my drive isn't really competition of the financial space. It's to be the best version of ourselves. But, I do think as a result, if I were to reach that, then the competition would take care of itself. We would dominate that competition. But yeah, again, man, it's leading with a good purpose, leading with your heart and giving back and helping, but using that motivation tool as much as you possibly can.
Amen to that. Yeah, there's so much to be said about wherever that motivation comes from. It's like just let it be the fuel to the fire. Don't worry about what it is too much. Just do it, because
Doesn't matter.
You're gonna need to get over so much different like resistance points throughout the whole journey and everything. Yeah.
Resistance, that's a good point that you brought up. Resistance, I bring up a lot. The person that keeps the bar on their chest for the longest has the biggest chest. And so when somebody I think the most successful people can just deal with more resistance for a longer period of time. And I think that's like the secret. Like you don't have to be the most talented. You don't have to be like the best person in the industry. You have to be able to withstand challenge and overcome anything, in fact. And if you're able to do that for a long period of time, you're going to win. Like you just will. You'll find ways to win. And so there's so many different ways to win, but I think the resistance, like I talk about that so much, is like people are always trying to find this hack or tip or trick. It's like it's a systematic approach. It's a long-term game. You have to be able to deal with a lot of stuff, and you have to get hit in the face and get back up every single time. And you're gonna get hit in the face like a lot, like really, really hard. It's not gonna feel great. And you get used to it to the point where it's like you're kind of numb. Kind of just get up because you're supposed to. You don't even feel the pain anymore.
Yeah, without a doubt. No, that's too true. So take a couple steps backward, back into your story. So we talked about the college era, we talked about the leaving the corporate. What was kind of the in between the game plan? Because I guess like what was your story in terms of how you learned the financial education side of things that you now are able to teach today?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is that, again, I think it's all self-education. So I just started self-educating myself, and then I started doing it. And I think, like I talked about earlier, the practical expert out there that just has done it. Like if I'm looking for a real estate expert, I'm not looking for somebody in a textbook that talks about like how to get your first Airbnb. I'm looking for the individual that has 20 Airbnbs and does it profitably at a high level. And so like what we did was we self-educated. Personal finance is not that hard at its core. As long as you're a decently smart individual, you're going to figure it out. And I do think that most professions out there are tougher to learn than personal finance. And I like to reassure people of that because most, doctors out there, or even like, the everyday person, a teacher, a plumber, an insurance agent, whatever profession you have, likely has the same level, if not more complication of education than personal finance truly does. A lot of personal finance is behavior in the mental aspect of it. And so once you self-educate, now it's a matter of figuring out the other tough parts, which are behavior and mental side of things. And so if you self-educate, which is what we did exactly, and then you put it into play and you see how it really plays out, you're going to build your own thing that works for you and your family for years to come. And then you can reiterate, you can test, you can, do research online to kind of fine tune some things. But once you have a process in place, a system in place, you're going to win really, really big. And so that's really what we did. We just continue to educate, self-educate, ask a lot of questions, follow different podcasts, follow different YouTubes, and learn it, systemize it, implement it. And then when you start teaching other people, you become even a better version of yourself. And so the teacher is the best student because you're literally listening and hearing everybody's complaints, issues, problems, and you're able to hear that, create solutions for it, and improve upon the system that you built. And that's exactly what we do to this day. Like, we have 2,000 students, but when we first started the academy, there were so many people that would be like, I don't know this, I don't know that. And I'm like, oh, I missed that part of it in the education material. So let me fill that gap. And I literally just, even to this day, really, truly, I continually just listen, implement. But the gaps that I had to fill were great in the beginning because I realized it's not just myself, it's somebody else. And other people have different issues or gaps. If I fill those, I'm going to create an amazing systemized product for anybody and everybody, to the point today, we don't get really many questions. Like everything's there, everything's productized, systemized for them. And we have the support if they do need it one-on-one, but it took a while. It takes time. I mean, it was 13 years and counting that we started this process. So it wasn't like it happened yesterday. I would say within, about a year or two, we had a really good feel for what worked for us. And then slowly and steadily, we built upon that to the point where we started helping friends and family. I understood where their gaps were. And I'm just that operational mind of like, okay, I hear a problem. How do I fix that problem? And I just constantly did that over and over and over and over. And I continually do that. And so that's all I do. And that's how I got to the point where we are today and how we get the crazy results we do, which actually surprised me, to be honest.
That's awesome. I love how it took you, 13 years, like you said, to get to this point, because it really showcases how much of a gap there is in the financial education space, that it took that time to pull together all the information and then be able to put it in a way where people can actually easily digest it today. So for anybody who's listening, like, please check out his stuff. Like, he's taken the work, he's gone through, and he's put it in an organized manner and is there to help and support. And really, it's one of the things that, personally for me, when it came to school, we hardcore missed that. Like, I don't know about you. I got a finance degree. You said you got a finance and accounting.
There was nothing about the degree that helped me with personal finance. And I'm in accounting and finance, and I'm a CPA. Nothing.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling. So, yeah, I endorse it 100%. Anyway, let's shift gears here a little bit and let's talk about some marketing stuff. So, in terms of how it is that you guys ended up, putting the product together and everything, once you got it in a good spot, what were you doing to basically drive traffic there and getting discovered for what you had?
I hire everything. My skill set is, I have an operational mind, but my skill set is what I provide, the product and service I provide. So my main focus was I know my limitations, I know my gaps. I need to bring in smart, wise people that have experience in the marketing field. So typically what we do is we do three different levels of marketing, and that would be organic content, which is our biggest driver without question, posting on a daily basis on multiple different social media channels. And really, I have really good knowledge. I know every little detail of personal finance, but sometimes when I write things, they're too in the details, and they're too helpful to be honest. And
Oh my
like my
goodness.
initial thought with marketing was provide as much detail, provide as much stuff as I possibly can, and as much knowledge, and that's going to help a lot of people. And what I realized is people shut down when they don't realize or they don't understand something. And a confused mind always says no. And I learned that very early on. And so what I did was I took a step back and I said, hold on, we need to think about where we're at in the content journey, in the funnel journey. We're at the top of the funnel. There are hundreds of thousands of people reading this content. If I'm breaking down an HSA to the level of detail I know an HSA to be, it's going to turn people off. So maybe I should talk about the potential of what an HSA can provide somebody, the big benefit, the overarching reason somebody should actually use an HSA or a taxable brokerage or start investing, or a basic concept like compound interest, instead of all the detail. And so I brought in experts to really take my knowledge and make it super simple so anybody can actually read it, so they can get interested, which is really our goal, is to serve other people. So if I give people everything, anything and everything, it's actually not going to serve people and help people. And I'm not good at that. So I outsourced this. I hired somebody. I brought somebody in house, and I said, listen, you need to write my content based on all the information I give you. And they did a lot better instantly. And that was a huge driver for our success, is organic Instagram content, Twitter content, YouTube, podcast, all that kind of stuff. Once I had that in place, it was understanding how to bring in other individuals to, serve and lead and all that kind of stuff. And so we realized email was a huge component of this. So the last 3 years, we hammered email, having really, really good detailed lists with tags and sequences and understanding the customer journey, so that we know where somebody's at every single point in time, so they can get the right content at the right time. And so we implemented that. And then we implemented the paid side, which was paying, paid media to attract a buyer, attract somebody that wants to take this to the next level with good quality content, within Facebook ads, within TikTok ads, within YouTube. And we got really, really systemized with those three areas, to the point today it's a science. We have a whole entire scorecard built out of EOS, from a book called Traction, which is one of my favorite books for entrepreneurs. And that is just a systemized process. We all know what's to expect. We all know what numbers we're supposed to be hitting. And if we do so, we're going to do very well. And we're going to continue to bring in a lot of business and help a lot of people. And so it's very, very simple in its core, but it's also very complicated and takes a lot of time to figure out, how do you make it simple?
Yeah, for sure. Uh, it's interesting that you mentioned the book Traction. We've been hearing that so many times in the past couple of weeks.
The best book in the world. Like, not even close.
We're gonna go give it a read, so it's gonna be awesome. I think it just arrived like 2 days ago.
We implemented that in April of 2024, and we really we actually applied it. So I read it twice. I read it the first time, applied some things, read it a second time, figured out where our gaps were, applied more. It is the best thing you will ever put into your business, especially if you're operationally minded and you don't have a system, because you haven't built a business before. It's just very easy, simplified knowledge. It's kind of that practical expert side of things, where it's not complicated. It's not, rocket science, but it does the job. It systemizes, it organizes, and it simplifies your whole organization to where you're focused on a few key things, and it drives everything else.
What was the biggest golden nugget that you got from that book?
I think the scorecard or the S. I go back and forth. What we do is, EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, is we translate that to what's called GAS. And so one thing they talk about is using acronyms. So our whole organization runs off GAS, which is GHL, Asana, and Scorecard. So GHL is our CRM. We're focused on maximizing that CRM. Then we have Asana, which is all of our resources and all of our SOPs. So we got to make sure everybody knows what they're doing, when they're doing it, and have all the resources to win at a high level. And then on the last part is the tracking of the data, which is the scorecard. Now, personally, I love Asana the most. My team always makes fun of me for it. I think that's the most impactful because I think the things that you do on a daily basis lead to the good numbers. And so I think the SOPs and Asana are my favorite without question. I think that's the biggest golden nugget to take away. And it also helps especially if you're organized type A, like where everything's at one given point in time. You have reports and stuff that are automated. You don't have to track things down. Your employees aren't confused of what to do, where to go for things. And so for me, I think that really brought in so much comfort to scale. But I do love the numbers because I'm an accountant, CPA by day. So I love to see the numbers in front of me to tell me the story of what's actually happening. And so then what I typically do, and I see on the back of on my whiteboard behind me, I have GAS. I put GHL, training, customer relationship. I have Asana, just pay attention. Like if you just show up in Asana, it's going to tell you what to do, when to do it, how to do it. And then Scorecard, just having accurate data to drive the organization in the right direction. And so again, really simplified down to those 3 core bullet points, but it moves mountains for your business.
I believe it. I feel like I heard something recently. I'm trying to remember what it was, but it was something along the lines of like addition by subtraction.
Oh, I love it. Simple as more, man.
Right? That
Less is more.
is so important. So once you get all the traffic coming into your business and everything, one thing that I see a lot of entrepreneurs actually miss, especially in the beginning stages, is like building relationships with those people and properly nurturing them. What is it that you guys do in your space to do that?
Yeah, we're still doing that and still learning that to this day. So one thing we've realized, we brought in a lot of cold leads, meaning, newer people that aren't familiar with the brand, what we do. And so we're incorporating longer form content, and we're also incorporating bottom of funnel content. So if somebody books a call or comes to our DMs, they will be hit with specific ads that are really, really like relatable type of content that are, shifting their beliefs, changing their beliefs, angling things that our ICP typically deal with. And if we reframe the way they think about it, they will get a lot of success. And we're we're in tune with that. We know exactly what those objections they have. And if they overcome those objections, they're going to win. So we have positioned our content. When you come to our DMs, which our organic content will push to, or paid ads will push to, you will be hit with a ton of really, really personal, relatable content. And if you change the mindset that, my content's gearing you to have, you're going to naturally get good results in building that relationship with that individual through the DMs or through that content, to get you to a call and to have multiple touch points with real people along the journey. You are going to naturally build that trust. And so, on top of that, I'd say our pre-call sequence for when you do book a call, we have very long form content. We have a 3-day challenge you can go through. And if you do that, like all of those things, obviously not everybody does every single one of those things, but we put as much long form and warm, content in front of you when you come contact us. And so that you build that relationship with us, who I am, my backstory, you might even know my daughter's name at this point. And so if you know that, you start to know us, you start to like us, and you start to trust us. And that's the essence of sales. If you know, like, and trust somebody and you have a problem in that arena, you're probably going to say yes, assuming that it's a quality product. It's kind of what you're looking for. And so that's exactly how we attack, anybody and everybody out there with just that longer form content in multiple different touch points from multiple different people.
That's awesome. I love that. You really touch on how much value you can add on the front end through the long form content and all of those things. What strategies have you found that have been working really well for you to attract those customers and then nurture them throughout that relationship?
Yeah. So this might sound really cliche, but like just being real and raw, like, well, that's what I am. It's what I never switched up on camera. I never changed the approach I take. My marketing team will say like, be, what do they say? Be, draw a line in the sand and, be, say like all debt is bad debt. Like, That's not me. So like I'm just gonna be me. And so like I will tell you how I feel about you. I'm very direct. I'm not gonna like beat around the bush. I'm gonna tell you the honest truth, and I'm gonna consistently relay good education to you. And so if I can get to know you through an event that we host, which I think is really good longer form content, live events, as well as IG lives. I do a lot of Instagram lives so I can connect with our people. People will know who I am, what I stand for, and I don't need to like call out some, all debt is bad debt like Dave Ramsey to draw that line in the sand to be, contradictory or something like that to drive crazy viral content. It's just like, I don't need that. I don't want to be like that. And so I'm going to be me. I'm going to be true to myself. I'm never going to switch up. It's something a lot of people have mentioned. In fact, like a lot of people will say, I just really trusted him. Like, it's because I'm just real. Like, and I know that sounds crazy, but you'd be amazed online at how many people are just trying to sell a story or sell some fake lifestyle or, you know, portray a character or something along the lines of that when you just don't need to. Just be yourself and provide a good service and product, and you're going to be really successful. And I think people forget the most basic common sense out there, which is like if somebody knows, likes, and trusts you and sees your stuff often and talks to you and has a real conversation and they have a problem that you can solve for them, they're going to work with you. Like that's the essence of basic, marketing and sales at its core. And you don't have to do some trick tip or something like that. Just be real.
100%. I love how you don't bend the knee to the pressure of everyone else in that idea of potential viral content. Because I mean, just the one statement alone that you talk about with Dave Ramsey and how all debt is bad, like that is something that if you actually look into it is far from true.
Mhm.
It's like you don't need to just throw out these random claims to get attention. It's like no, you're
Yeah,
actually
and,
doing
and
great.
and and truthfully, if I have a very hard, like a hard take, I will say it without question. Now that could go viral, that might not, but I have a truthful stance on if I do say something is like this is how it is. But typically, it depends. Like in the financial world, it depends. And I do stay true to that because I've seen situations in our own situation itself where like I wasn't expecting to do what we did financially, but we did because life played out in ways we did not expect. And we can't always anticipate those types of things, but all the financial tools are out there because they're financial tools. It's not to say you always should use them, but if they're there and you have a specific situation that calls for that, here's that tool that you can use to your advantage. And so, I've lived long enough and had enough stuff happen to us to realize that like you just never know. You really never know. And so being aware and educated on everything available to you so that if it suits you at that point in time, you're good to go. I think it does people, more harm than good if you're saying always this is the only way. I really do. I think it helps more people if you are just educating them, telling them everything available. And I think the reason Ramsey's so successful is because he does hold those hard truths, whether he truly believes that or not. And he has a very simple approach that attracts a lot of people. And so I think that's, a testament to him, but that's just not who I am. I don't always have to find a very contradictory statement and go say it. I'm just going to tell you what I really feel.
100%. I respect that a lot. So in terms of some of the like financial tidbits that you've learned along the way, like what are some of those things that you think are items that people maybe didn't know that they should know or should be common knowledge, and some of those tools and resources that can help them out of certain situations, maybe examples of students you've helped or something of that nature?
Yeah, some basic rules of thumb and financial rules of thumb. We have 17 rules of thumb that most of our students are going to operate out of. If you like systemize your finances within those 17 rules of thumb, that is going to be like one of the biggest drivers for your success because a lot of those are like big ticket items. And so like if you can stay within those big rules of thumb, I'll give you a few examples. Keep your mortgage payment below 25%. That includes taxes and insurance and all that kind of stuff. If you're able to do that, like the reason those things are in place is to give you the wiggle room to make good financial moves elsewhere. And so you don't have to abide by those, but if you put those into your system and you put those into your life, it's hard to lose. And so if you just put those in there, and I think the second piece of it is automating. Like I don't think people realize, I know it sounds simple, but I don't think people realize how important automation is for your finances. Because if you create a plan, what we do with all of our students is create a systematic plan that gets them from point A to point B based on what they told us. If we know you want to get to point B, we know all of the inputs that go into that. If we now automate that process, automate that system, so your bill pay down, your debt pay down, your investments, and we just set that up one time, all you have to do is show up to work, and you don't even have to pay attention to what's going on in your finances, and it will naturally work. And you'll know the timeline in which that works, which lights people up and gives people that emotional component, which is actually a healthy part of the emotional component with finance, because you don't want to have a ton of emotion when it comes to finances. But if you can see the end in sight, and you know before you start that marathon exactly which way you're going and exactly the route you're going to take and the pace you're going to go, you know that, one, I'm excited because I see it. I can feel it. I can see it. I can breathe it, all that kind of stuff. I can taste it. Like, you really know what's going to happen. That naturally will light you up. And I saw that with a lot of people, with us in particular at first with debt pay down. We saw the end goal. We saw how much principal we were going to pay, the interest we were going to pay, the timeline we were going to pay, because we listed out an amortization schedule. When we saw that, we realized what was actually doable. It wasn't just an emotional feel of like, it's probably going to be paid off in 12 months, or I'm never going to pay off my student debt. When we saw that, it lit us up to figure out, okay, well, what if we added an extra $250 per month? Or what if we added this per month? That creates creativity, and that creates solutions, and that creates action. And so you systemize, you organize, you know the bare minimum of what's going to happen. Then you get creative. Then you get emotional towards, in a good way, towards your finances, and you go figure out, you become resourceful to speed that journey up, to get to that millionaire status quicker, to get to that financial freedom quicker. And that's a really, really encouraging thing. But I don't think people realize how important automation is, how important a system is, because when you see it, when you feel, when you taste it, it's so much more doable, and so much, like, you can really envision it. And so that's what's holding a lot of people back. And it comes down to something very, very simple at its core. But that, I think that's why it's not talked about, is because people don't realize the power of what that is.
100%. I find it fascinating. It's so interesting when you have your own personal experiences with things and then you hear about how somebody else struggles with them. It's like, for example, the automation side of things, when you mentioned that, like, that didn't even cross my mind as one of the potential issues that people run into. Because to me at the time, after, the way I organize my finances, it just seems second nature. But it's like, it's not one of those things that I remember somebody teaching or something of that nature. And it's like, that is one of the most critical pieces. Like, if you automate it, it's on autopilot. Like,
It's a math equation. It really is. So you can tell, like, if you have the right tools, which we use: a balance sheet, amortization schedule, and a budget. So we know our free cash flow from our budget. We know what our goals are on our balance sheet. We know where our current net worth stands. We know where we're trying to get to, because we mapped it out. We talked about our goals and where we're trying to get to. And our amortization schedule has the exact debt pay down timeline with exact principal and interest. And all of this is a math equation. And so if I know exactly the timelines of everything, of when I'm going to get from point A to point B, and then I automate that, like, you can't lose. Like, you can't mess that up, unless you, like I always say, lock the system and then go off with your life and go do whatever. Because as long as your system is working and you're not manually manipulating things, or the market goes down and you freak out and you change your strategy all of a sudden, or something happens and you decide not to pay off debt that month versus when you would have if you would have automated that, you'd be amazed at what happens. And if you have all the different, levels of protection in place, none of those things will be impacted. So people might naturally go to, like, what if I lose a job? What if I, have an emergency? What if I do this? You have all the protection agents, like, in your castle already set, like the moat's already around your finances, and within, everything's automating. And so if something comes and attacks that castle, your moat protects you already, so that its stuff is not impacted. And that is such an important topic, and it's just not talked about. I don't think even financial professionals understand the impact of it. The reason I've understood this so in depth is because we work with a behavioral psychologist for all of our students, and I've seen the behavioral and the mental aspect of finance. And a lot of it has zero logic. A lot of it's all of that and zero math and zero logic. And so how do I take out the issue of behavioral and mental? Is literally systemize, automate, and basically AI your way to success, and take out the human component as much as I possibly can. And so that's why it works so well. But it's a very simple concept until you actually implement it. And you can see the step-by-step in all your financial statements, which is really cool as well.
that's very fascinating. I love that. The behavioral side of things is huge. I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until I met my current girlfriend, and she came from that realm of things and pointed out a lot of amazing things. And I didn't realize how much it's our human nature is actually against us rather than for us. So
It's finances are the reason people think of finance is because our human nature is directly hurting us every single day. We don't want to stay still, and you have to stay still to win in finance. That's the essence of it.
yeah, that's so wild. I love that. Kudos to you for bringing in the expert and getting everybody hooked up in that capacity. That's awesome. Um, so in terms of some of the products you mentioned that you offer, you mentioned the book and then you mentioned a challenge. I'd love to hear a little bit of what is covered in the book and then also like what do you guys do in terms of the challenge?
Yeah, so they're all actually very similar, because I have a systematic approach to everything I do. And so the content I put out is very in line with that exact system in different ways to communicate that system. And so the book is literally a replica step by step of what Budgetdog Academy is. However, it's not going to have the resources templates because it's a book, right? It's not going to have the one-on-one support. It's not going to have the investment deal opportunities that we do get for students internally. And so it might have the roadmap, but it's not going to show you it just can't because it's a book. It's going to talk about it. And so I do give like free downloads in the book and all that kind of stuff as much as possible. But it's just the book is the education of what the academy is, and the academy is that practicality, the step-by-step guidance, along with that support as the community and all that kind of stuff. And so that's the difference between the book and the academy. Now, the 3-day challenge is a way to show people what is possible. And so it's the beginning steps of what we would do in the academy anyway, but showing them like, hey, what we do actually will get you results. This isn't just like, voodoo. This isn't just like, hey, I'm going to tell you we're going to get you results. I'm going to show you for free. And you're going to be amazed by it because that's where our warmest leads come from. They have 3 days they get to know me. They have 3 days that they get templates, resources, homework, trust building, conversations with my team, and they get to feel what it's like to work with us. And it's all free. So it's like, there's no pressure. If you don't want to work with us, that's fine. But I'm going to show you what it's like. I'm going to give you a taste of what it's like. And if you did this within 3 days, what can you do in 6 months? What can you do in a decade? And that opens people's mind in a big, big way. And that's why a lot of people work with us is, all my team, my enrollment team literally loves when people come from the challenge because they know us, they've worked with us. They're not going to have all those like skeptical questions. They know what they're getting when they sign up. And it's a good way to build additional layers of trust. And I can't recommend a challenge more. One, you're showing people step by step of how to get results. You're doing it for free, so you're going to bring in a lot of people that are going to do that for free, and that's all. But you can help people, and that's ultimately what our mission is not just to make $1,000,001. It's to make a real and lasting impact. And so when you can start off like that, and you can really make an impact, whether it's free, whether somebody pays you money to do so, that is what we're looking for as entrepreneurs, is really making and changing society in a monumental way. And that's what the challenge does. So I can't tell you how many people come to the challenge that are just lit up. And they're like, somebody texted me yesterday or messaged me yesterday on Instagram. They're like, I haven't worked with you, I haven't talked to you, but you've helped me pay off $50,000 of debt. And
Holy cow.
that's such an impactful statement. Like, just to see that stuff, and I get this stuff all the time, whether it be the challenge, whether it be our content, but it's just the consistency that we put out content and the helpful nature of all the tools that we provide. We do a lot of resource drops for people so they can actually use tools that were built internally for free. And so like they can see what's possible. They can do all these things, and that just lights me up. That's really why I do what I do.
I love that. That's very selfless of you and is really putting the power to the people again, giving them,
Yes.
arming them with the information and then the tools to actually do the things that will help them out. So what is the result that you're ultimately looking to help people get through that challenge?
Yeah, so the result for the challenge in particular is to realize that you can begin your financial roadmap, and you can take the resources that we use, budget, balance sheet, amortization schedule. You can put all of your finances in order, in track, and you can see the end goal of what you're going to get. Now, when you do that, you're going to realize that, hey, there's a lot to learn. There's a lot of, roadblocks I'm going to have. And so that's where working with somebody one-on-one will make sense to level up. So we're giving them that step-by-step guidance, but you can't do a 6-month free challenge. I couldn't show up every single day for 6 months, nor would people actually, commit to that. So that's where the academy levels people up. It shows people the beginning steps, how you're going to systemize, how you're going to set everything up. But from there, there's a lack of education from an investing standpoint, a budgeting standpoint. There's only so much you can cover in 3 days, but it gives you the tools and resources to set the foundation. The foundation's the most important. How do you build off that foundation is what the house turns into. And so that's where the academy really takes you from just the foundational aspect, and it levels you up into building an entire house.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. I love that. So we're in the beginning of 2025. So what are your goals this year?
Are you referring to business goals, financial goals? What do you, which angle do you want me to take here?
Go for business and finance, I guess. Yeah.
So I'll look at the goals on my whiteboard right behind me. The very first one is donating $1 million to Dravet syndrome. So we didn't touch on this, but my daughter was diagnosed with Dravet syndrome at 5 months old. It was actually right when I took the leap of faith into entrepreneurship. That's how it works. And that's been a huge, huge part of our journey and a huge part of our story. And so on our website, budgetdog.com, we have a link at the very, very top. It says Budgetdog and Dravet. We linked up and we partnered to raise a bunch of money. In fact, my actual national bestseller, The Roadmap to Financial Freedom, is dedicated to her. And you can see on the book, it's 100% donated to Dravet syndrome. So all proceeds go there, which is really cool. That's my number one goal, man. Whether that happens in 2025 or 2026 or so on and so forth, I don't know. I stopped saying it needs to be done by X date, to be honest, because I used to stress myself out so much when it was like that. And so what I want to do is just create a mission, create a vision, and it will come when it comes. And the other big piece is I want to make sure we have $2.5 million in our brokerage from a financial aspect, just our brokerage alone. We're roughly at like 1.9. I want to hit 2.5 specifically there from a financial aspect. That doesn't include other investments, but just the brokerage. I think that flexibility is going to be awesome. And then lastly, I really want to hit 1 million a month in the business, and we're pretty close. I think we can get there. And I think we're a few, actions away or a few decisions away from making that happen. And we've seen very close to that. And I just know we're going to get there in 2025 at some point in time. And so, again, like that's not my ultimate push or motivation, but it is a scorecard metric or scoreboard metric I do use to see, are we growing? Are we dying? I think if you're not growing, you're dying. And the biggest impact of that is how many people have we impacted with that? And so specifically, if you do the math backwards based on our product, that's roughly 150 to 200 people a month that we're able to help and change their lives. So if that's the case, that's a win-win for everybody. And we take that money, we give back, we donate, we do a lot of good things with it. And so if we can do all that, we can have a flywheel of effect of winning across the board. Man, it lights me on fire every single day to do that.
Amen to that, dude. That's awesome. So what do you think is the thing in your business that is kind of like the big domino, as Russell Brunson calls it, where you knock that one thing over and then everything that you're trying to get on the other side of it comes from that?
I think talent and resources. So if you can't find good talent, it's going to be hard to scale your business. And so that was one of my biggest challenges, still is to this day, getting the right people at management level and leadership level to then help everybody else underneath them. If you're a one-man crew, which I was at one point, it's easy because it's you. But as you build more people, you have more lines of communication, you have more chance of error, you have just, people are in your mind 24/7. That's where SOPs come into play, Asana, all that kind of stuff. But I think if you have good leadership that you trust and you have a vision as to where they need to get to and, KPIs of where they need to get to, if you trust those individuals, they're going to find a way to that vision that you have. If you don't have that, you're going to struggle massively. And so for the last 3 to 4 years, that's all I've been focusing on is how do I bring the top tier talent into this organization? Because I know the other stuff will kind of take care of everything, we need. That's not going to be the hard part. Instead of focusing on like what SOP to build or who's going to build the SOP, we focus on how do we bring the best talent to then generate the result that we want to, actually get, and not forcing the way we go about it, but bringing that talent to have them do what they've already done and done elsewhere. They have the experience, they have the leadership. Find those people, bring them in, trust them, have reporting up to you, have KPIs, have expectations, and you can't go wrong.
Heck yeah.
And that's not easy. That's very hard to find.
You bring people into the mix and it gets complicated really quick.
Oh, very quick.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, as we get close to wrapping up this podcast here, one of the final questions I like to ask is we live in a unique period of time where we're able to capture moments in time through video and have that for future generations to learn from. So what is the best piece of advice that you can think of that you've learned in your life, or a life lesson that future generations to come will be able to thrive from knowing that information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't want to rush it. And it depends which. I think it depends which angle you're coming from. I have a really good quote, and this has really stuck with me for quite some time. But we're on the lesson of entrepreneurship, right? We're on the lesson of building your business and scaling that business, and helping and serving a lot of people. Nick Saban, one of the greatest college coaches of all time for the Alabama Crimson Tide, he has a good quote. It says, "If you want to make everyone happy, don't be a leader, sell ice cream." And so one thing I've struggled with, because I naturally have a pretty big heart, I want people happy, is you aren't going to make everyone happy. Like nobody, not everybody, especially when you're scaling an organization or making a lot of decisions, you're not going to satisfy all 20 people in your company. It's just not going to happen. You have to be comfortable with that. Number one, you have to be comfortable with people falling off the wagon wheel while you're pushing ahead, and the boat is going to have the people that you might pick up people along the way, you might drop people along the way. That's just part of it. But if you have that core vision, do not worry about making other people happy. Think about what's best for the company, what's best for the organization and the unit to get you to the vision that you have. And so that's it. You have to be comfortable with that. And that's a very hard thing. And I still struggle to this day, because I do want everybody happy naturally. I don't want to upset people, but I have to be the leader. I have to make those hard decisions. And sometimes with limited information, and sometimes to be wrong. So you have to live and die by the decisions you make. And so that's hard. But one thing, I brought up my daughter is, she has a very complicated 1 in 16,000 rare syndrome. That doesn't always have answers. That doesn't always have a clear-cut solution. We have a lot of experts in her medical field or medical world that we go to. We have functional neurologists and nutritionists, the best healthcare in the nation. We moved across the nation. They don't always have exactly the answer. And as parents, we have to be like the general contractor, and we have to make those decisions. And sometimes you live and die by your decisions, and you try your best with all the information you can take in. But sometimes you get that wrong, and you have to be okay with being wrong, and you have to be okay with getting back up after you fail. And so that is some of the best advice you will ever get along the way, because you will experience this if you do grow an organization of any group of any sort.
Man, that was fire. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. That was awesome.
Absolutely.
So for anybody who's interested in getting involved in either your challenge, finding your book, or reaching out to you to ask questions, where can they go?
Yeah, you can always go to my DMs within Instagram. Just talk to me directly. You can go to my website, budgetdog.com. My national bestsellers on there. You won't find Budgetdog. You can apply on there to talk with my team, but it's always best to talk to me first or see if it's a good fit. And so coming to my DMs, coming to our challenge, we run it every single week, Monday through Wednesday. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you will be hit with an ad likely if you engage with my content for that. So you will see that. And that's probably your starting point. That's a really good place to be. But you can't go wrong. Just always reach out. I always think it's funny when people are like, I had somebody yesterday. I actually have people all the time. I'm so afraid to reach out to you. I was so nervous to reach out for like a year, but I've been following you. It's like, don't be. And I recite that all the time. And I resay that all the time. But people still are naturally. So I always have to say it again. And there's no reason to be. If you have a problem, we have the solution and we can help you. We will tell you truthfully, straight to your face, can we or can we not help you? And if we can't, we'll give you a resource of a connect that somebody can, and somebody that's good within our network that can help your problem. So never be afraid to ask the question. If you don't ask the question, the answer is no. And that's something I lived by my whole life.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been phenomenal. And we'll catch you later.
Appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me.
You've been listening to Money on My Mind with your host, Brennan Schlagbaum. If you found value in today's discussion, share it with someone who could benefit from it too. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already, so you never miss a money mastery tip. Until next time, stay passionate about your financial journey and keep taking bold steps towards your money goals.